So, what is the theory of unsound chess? The fundamental theory of unsound chess is that basically it's very difficult to win at chess against modern chess theory. At a certain point in time in chess, opening theory started to dictate what everybody played. And that's a good thing from the standpoint that chess is becoming more exact science. Um, it's a bad thing if you look at the future of chess, which is that a computer may solve it someday, and somebody with an incredible mind might try to memorize every possible variation of what could or could not be a forced win for white, for instance. Although chances are it'll probably be a draw if it ever does get solved. Um, the fact is that when I got to a certain point in chess, and I was playing at a fairly advanced level, that in order to get further, I had to start studying openings. For instance, I'm an e4 player by nature, and as white with e4, there are many, many openings people can come up with as black, and I would have to know every single part of every single modern variation of every opening to avoid the new Sicilian surprise or the new amazing Berlin defense or whatever somebody's playing. That would require a lot of hours every week, and there are players out there even now in Class A chess, where some of my students play, that know opening theory 15 to 20 moves deep. And my students run into these, and after studying their opening theories 15 or 20 moves deep, and are still having problems overcoming or just getting an advantage with something like white against a common defense that black employs, simply because somebody took a lot of time learning something out of a book. Now, that's not my idea of what is fun in the world and playing chess. So the first thing that I ask is, why does opening theory kill joy? Well, I just gave you an example. If it becomes homework, it's no longer play. It's no longer fun. Now maybe it's fun for some people because they think, well, I'll just study harder, do a little better, and um, that'll prove somehow that I'm smarter. No, it just proves that you can memorize lines better. Um, and memory's a good thing to develop, and that there is a benefit to it. But what we're seeing even more now in the world of super GMs is super GMs using winnings to buy supercomputers. Why do they want supercomputers? Because the computers can use engines that can analyze things more amazingly and deeply than other computers. And what then they'll do is they'll look at a particular defense or something that their opponent is going to play in some sort of match, and they'll find holes in their defense. We see this sort of thing all the time where someone is playing some incredible line against some known thing somebody plays, and it's simply because they memorized something that came out of a computer somewhere, because I really don't believe that the players come up with this stuff over the board themselves. I mean, yes, some of that does happen. We've seen an unbelievable moves people like Kiriakin make that had to happen, like simply over the board. Nobody could have gotten that deep into a game and memorized something. But um, for the most part, there are now super GMs and various GMs just playing things in order to avoid the mass opening theory preparation that people have made, especially employing computers. And in order to move ahead, I had to devote 10 to 20 hours a week of my life basically studying opening theory in order to you know be what maintain some sort of rating that would at the most make me like $100 in a tournament as a master. It's like what's the point? My brilliancy over the board is not going to overcome these people. The joy of chess that came in the day of Morphy is long gone. So I propose a return to that world, and it's very difficult to return to that world in tournaments unless you employ certain tactics, and these things do work. And I'm going to espouse another principle here that is going to throw the educators of the world into a small tizzy, but that's that it's 100 times easier to get a B plus than it is to get an A. Now, this was true in many of my university classes, and I have lots and lots of university classes that I've taken in my life, and so many so it's like nauseating, and I can't begin to list them. From mostly in computer science and mathematics, but also in the arts and linguistics and various things. But one of the things I discovered was that I'm not the stupidest person in the world, and what I'm capable of doing is taking tests extremely well and preparing for them in a short amount of time, where I basically get the idea of what's going on in class. And I could pretty much show up a few times a semester um, and not listen to all the lectures and instruction, and then just show up on test days and get a get at least a B plus, often an A in these classes. So like the times when I did show up, I'd be on the dean's list. Like there are times when I showed up to every class and I got straight A's in like 6 classes or something. So what I discovered is that my time was a lot better spent elsewhere doing other things, because I was basically assured a B plus. So getting an A was not of optimal value to me. And in chess, I went further with this principle, where I stopped spending the 10 to 20 hours a week and just said to myself, well, let's see, what can we do other than, driving our rating up into the, nosebleed world and studying chess 10 to 20 hours a week. Well, let's see, we can go off, get multiple college degrees, and then make lots of money and, possibly travel the world or retire, do whatever we want. Well, all of which, have kind of occurred for me in one way or the other. And so I've chosen to keep chess a hobby, a very wonderful and interesting and fabulous hobby that I love dearly. But if you turn it into a mania, that may be required for you to advance beyond whatever point at which you peak in chess, simply because people's opening theory is so astoundingly memorized these days, and it gets better and better even with the advent of computers. New things are found. So if you can get a B plus, I suggest that might be a really good place to be in the chess world. Life is worth more than chess. However, for those of us who are really into chess, it seems like a pretty big thing. So how do we really implement that? How do you apply that principle? And this is where the theory of unsound chess comes in. Now, I play lines that limit my opponent's responses. And everybody has a chess style, and when you get past the beginning parts of learning chess, and you get you start to advance into the strong club play, lower tournament play, and finally mid to upper tournament play, you find out, am I a tactical open player? Am I a positional player? Am I a combination of these things? There are tests online that will ask you questions about your personality. Are you a Petrosian? Are you a Botvinnik? My students have taken these tests, and strangely, I come out a little bit in the world of Kramnik, which really just amazed me, because I consider myself more along the lines of a wild, open attacking type player. However, I really like to attack out of a position of strength. I don't like to attack when there's no attack there, because I've had that turned on me too many times. So you have to discover what your style is and what your comfort level is, and then you have to work with either a coach or just your own common sense to figure out what grandmaster plays the most like you, and start studying their games and start trying to understand the types of things you can play where your comfort zone exists, that you can limit what your opponent's opening responses are going to be. So you don't have to study 10 to 20 hours a week. You can study more like, a half an hour or something like that, maybe an hour, or just play a lot of chess, rapid chess, which I don't really approve of that much, but it is fun. But if you play it with the idea of improving your opening theories and your ability to deal with various upfront possibilities, it can be a great deal of fun and also very educational. So you're trying to find what those moves are and what those lines are that people are not that familiar with, and if you're possible, you're trying to get them out of book theory. I had the misfortune of having a father who taught me how to play chess, and he was a decent chess player, and he gave me a book. The book was called Common Sense in Chess by Emanuel Lasker, and that was a terrible book to begin playing chess with. Even though I love Emanuel Lasker, he left everybody hanging, and maybe this was the idea, was he would come up with something after 15 moves and say black is ahead or something, and it just leave you hanging with no analysis. There was no day of the in a computer where you could stick it in and find, well, no, that's really not true. And it turns out that a whole lot of the theory that was espoused then were all B moves. They were like B plus moves, not the A move, not the great theory move. But you know what? I still play all kinds of openings like that, where I play the B move, and it's something that has been discarded, that nobody has looked at, and people still have to respond to it. So one of the principles I'm talking about is that there are suboptimal lines that modern theory ignores that can still make your opponents go horribly wrong. And when your opponent goes horribly wrong because they're unfamiliar with it, they don't know what to do with it, or they're trying to apply some new principle or memorization to it, that's all it takes to get a tremendous advantage in a game. So is this unsound? Is this unsound chess? Some great grandmaster once upon a time said something to this effect. They said, Lasker's B moves are very hard to respond to. You know, and you're talking about a person who was world champion to a ripe old age by playing a lot of moves that were suboptimal moves. Very hard to respond to. You know, they have to be responded to. And if you're taking somebody out of their memorization and comfort zone to do that, that's your goal. You're trying to have fun playing chess. You're trying to actually play chess rather than play memorized lines. And they're trying to play memorized lines, and they're ignoring, you know, basic chess. So the fun part of chess is playing these sorts of things and adopting them for yourselves and sticking with them. And if you discover what these things are, the question is, are they unsound? And the answer is, in the deepest sense, yes, they're unsound. Perfect play against lines like these is going to beat you. And, you know, somebody using a machine is going to beat you. You know, a grandmaster who has seen this sort of thing in years past is going to beat you. These sorts of things can beat you. So the question is, are they going to just wipe you out? And the answer is probably not. They're not so unsound that, you know, you're from a computer standpoint, you're down 2 or something. You might be down 1.5. You know, there are lots of openings I play where Stockfish or somebody has me down 1.5 after 3 moves. So I win those games. And it's precisely because of what I'm talking about, because chess games are lost, not won in general. And so at the highest level, you're going to lose some of these games. Are they unsound? From a scientific standpoint, yes. From a scientific standpoint, almost all human play is unsound. So we're human beings. We play against each other. Time is involved. And if you're trying to have fun playing chess, what you want is to get somebody out of the book. You want to have something that requires precision on their part to respond. And you want to limit the amount of time you have to do studying what those things are so that they don't have 52 responses to one move, so that you have to study opening theory. So this is the gist of the theory of unsound chess that I'm espousing by this website. And we're going to show you examples of games and various things as time goes on, but this is at least an explanation of what the name of the site's about.